Oftentimes in the speaking industry, we call them like swipe files, where we might watch other speakers and just like something that they do. And you don't ever take or steal, but you say, wow, that really worked with an audience. How can I make an activity similar to that or something to that effect?
You're listening to the Let's Talk Marketing podcast, hosted by me, Katya Allison. So what have you gotten yourself into? In short, it is going to be a good time. There's going to be great conversation and a little bit of learning along the way. Through insightful interviews with top marketers, entrepreneurs, and thought leaders, I get to explore the latest trends, techniques, and strategies in this whole wonderful world of marketing. Now, I'm here to offer you engaging and informative discussions to help you stay up to date on the latest trends and take your marketing skills up to the next level. Today's guest is Corey Perlman, a digital marketing expert, best-selling author, and a renowned speaker with over a decade of experience at the forefront of the industry. Now, Corey's journey through digital marketing has been nothing short of remarkable. From his early days in the e-commerce division of General Motors to establishing himself as a sought-after consultant and speaker, Corey's expertise has left an indelible mark on brands ranging from Cisco Foods to the PGA Tour. That last one is going to get my husband very excited. Now, in this episode, we'll explore the importance of authenticity in social media marketing. He really kind of sheds this light on the significance of showcasing the human side of businesses, providing value and engaging authentically with your audience. We also explore the crucial task of selecting the right social media platform for your business and how it's important to craft the right strategy and content for each network. It's all this and more. Whether you're a seasoned marketer, an aspiring entrepreneur, or a curious listener eager to decode the mysteries of marketing, keep listening to uncover these actionable strategies and invaluable wisdom from Corey. So let's get to it. Let's talk marketing. Corey, welcome to the Let's Talk Marketing podcast. Super excited to have you on here today.
Thank you, Katya. It's great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Of course. Well, let's get the audience to get to know you a little bit. I always got my starter questions. I'd love to hear from you about what your first marketing role was, or what you would consider a marketing role, because I find that this answer gives me a lot of different things.
Yeah, I would say it was actually with General Motors way back in the day in Detroit, Michigan. Shout out to Detroit. Yeah, I was doing marketing for their dealer network, for their e-commerce division. This was back when the internet was figuring itself out, dating myself a little bit. So I was working with car dealers, the cream of the crop, just the good old boy network, so to speak, and helping them understand the value of what this internet's going to be, what is marketing, how it's changing, how it's evolving, the web, websites, all that fun stuff. And then obviously it morphed over the years into different things, but that's what it started with, was with General Motors.
Yeah, I love it. Now, what do you currently do?
Now, I currently own an agency, and we work with small and medium-sized businesses on helping them stay top of mind through social media marketing. And I'm also a professional speaker, so I get to go on the road to fun and cool places and talk about social media for business. And then from there, we will pull in clients that really understand the value of social thanks to that talk, but they can't do it themselves. And so they hire my team to do the heavy lifting.
Nice. Now, what is it that you love about what you do? But there's a good and a bad to everything. So not only do I want to know what you love about what you do, but I also want to know what you don't like. If there was anything that we could pluck out of that, and then it would be chef's kiss perfection, what would that be? So let's start with the positive. What is it that you love about what you do?
I got 2 kids, so I don't love the travel part, but I knew that I loved speaking just because I remember one time, got off stage and felt the energy of the people and all that. And I got back to my room and it was really quiet and there was nothing going on. And I didn't even realize I was doing this, but I found myself getting back in the elevator, going back downstairs and walking through the crowd again. I didn't even realize I did. It was almost like day sleepwalking. And I came home and I told my wife that, and she's like, it's because you love what you do. And you just love that moment and that energy. And she was right. So that's what I love to do. I love to speak and I love to be on stage and I love to connect with people in that regard and to give all of myself I can there. And then to receive that feedback back means a lot to me.
It's a rush, huh?
It is a weird rush because it's also literally the world's number one fear, which is public speaking. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you still get nervous or butterflies? Is it like nerves, excited? Because that's always what, like, I'll tell my kids that too. It is the number one fear. I mean, the fact that you can stand on stage and get words out. I mean, you may black out the entire time, but the fact that you can articulate words out, I think is really huge. But I kind of wondered, do you still get the butterflies?
100%. I always get the butterflies. And I believe personally that if you don't, you're too comfortable and the audience will know that. And so I get the butterflies. It turns into adrenaline. And when I get on stage, I'm able to push through it and get the energy that I need. But I absolutely still get the butterflies for sure.
I love it. Do you have something that you do consistently to like prep and get in the game? Do you have like a song?
Like a walkout song?
Yeah, like a walkout song in your head or like a mantra or like anything that you do to get all pumped before you do walk up on stage?
Like I've watched myself on video sometimes and I don't even realize I do this. I can definitely see myself stretching, which is kind of a weird, more just like I'm kind of energetic and you're on your feet for an hour. So I find myself just stretching a little bit as I'm being introduced and just breathing. It's funny you asked that question. I just wrote about it on LinkedIn. I take some breaths and I remind myself on who I'm there for. I am not there for myself. I'm there for them. It takes some of the nerves away because it's like,
Yeah.
how dare I be nervous and to allow that to get in the way? Because these people don't need to know about the nerves. They need to know the message. And so get out of yourself and get into the audience. Be real present. Don't think about anything else. Just think about them. And that's what I try to do. And that makes me feel present.
I love that. Sorry, I interrupted you on the, what would you pluck out? So we just talked about what you love. What, if anything, I could take out? What would you take out?
Running a business, and I think this will resonate with folks, that whether or not you are the owner or you manage people, the day in and day outs of managing both people and clients can be tough sometimes. I just think people have bad days and you're the one that gets the brunt of that. I think that part's for me the hardest. So what I've tried to do with that is try not to get too high on the highs and not to get too low on the lows. Over the years, I've learned when you lose a client, when somebody wants to leave, when we've had a bad interaction, just not to get too down or too worried. But also when you gain a new client, when you've had a great week, don't get too excited because the next week can be different. So try to keep it even keel as opposed to up and down.
Yeah, that's great advice. I actually got something similar advice many years ago. Someone once told me after someone just didn't care for me, which is fine. Now I can say that it was fine. My younger self was like, why don't they like me? This need to be liked, right? And like be accepted. And we all want to be accepted. But I remember this so distinctly and it still runs in my head, right? On this loop. She said, you know what? Sometimes you're just not going to be everybody's cup of tea. And that's okay. And I totally run through that in my head. It's interesting that from a business perspective, you do feel that way too. I've run an agency before too in a prior life, and you're going to lose clients. They're not meant to be with you forever. They're not meant to be with you forever. So I think that acceptance is really interesting. So ironically, we are going to be talking about social media today as part of the strategy and being authentic on social media. But before we dive into it, I'd love to know how you leverage social media, if you do, for inspiration, entertainment, and education. And if you do leverage social for either one of these things, which social platforms do you gravitate towards?
That's a great question to start with. I appreciate that because that can be a kind of a misnomer, sort of a weird thing with people who are in the business. Because I've definitely had to disconnect myself from it, and everyone else has for mental health reasons, for sure. And it's really hard. It's both hard for me and for my team, knowing that they have to be on day in and day out, but also not have to consume all the time. So I took Facebook off my phone, for example. I just had it off for a while. I've gone back and forth on X. I've had it off for a long time. I just put it back on just like for March Madness reasons, random, but I'll take that off for times. I like Instagram and LinkedIn. Those tend to be my two favorite platforms. Instagram a little bit more for the entertainment value, like you said, just some of my hobbies and interests. And then LinkedIn for business reasons. Absolutely. That's my heart and soul platform for where I just like to digest information as well as try to give it out. I'm probably on that one personally the most. And then I can also say this to your audience that even though I'm on stage talking about social media, and even though I own a social media agency, I don't press all the buttons and I'm not on there all the time. And I think that's okay as creators of social media, as people who can still be authentic, as we're going to talk about. And people might say, well, that doesn't sound very authentic. But let me be clear. I'm still the one who is giving out the content on social. I'm still shooting the videos, I'm still writing the content. I'm just not posting it. So I don't have to necessarily be on there, but I can still be myself on there, but I don't have to be out there consuming it all the time.
Yeah, absolutely. It can definitely get overwhelming. I'm surprised that you didn't say TikTok at all for anything. It's an interesting social platform, and it's interesting who gravitates towards it from like an inspiration, entertainment, and education standpoint. And I say that fully owning the fact that it is my guilty pleasure and I am a scroller. It is my entertainment. It's bite size. I don't have to think about it. Like I can stop it, pick it up. And yeah, I love it for that. But it's interesting that you didn't bring that up at all. Do you dabble in it at all? Do you have thoughts on TikTok?
It's almost like we're talking about it's like a nicotine habit, and I know like the cigarettes are right over there, and it's true. Like part of the reason I didn't talk about and I don't use it is because I know if I pick up one, I'll be on it like all the time. I know for sure, and I think that nowadays my guess is that I'm getting very similar content and I'm using Instagram in a very similar way because you'll see the TikTok emblem a lot on Instagram, so I know they're cross. I'm seeing the same stuff I probably would see on TikTok. And the only reason I think, to be honest, that I'm not talking about TikTok is a little bit about my age. I'm more comfortable with the Instagram/Facebook technology. And I've just purposely just stayed away from TikTok for the sole reason that I know it would be another thing that I'd probably be on a lot.
No, that's totally fair. And I think you're right. It's part of your business, part of what you speak about, what you do for a living. Like you do need a break from it. You need a break from it. Not everything has to be out there for the world to be able to see. So I can definitely appreciate that. Now, that was the social media part. But as a marketer, I would imagine that you've got to also be able to stay up to date on trends. Are there other ways that you stay up on trends? Are there podcasts that you're like, this is like my Monday podcast I listen to all the time, besides mine? Just kidding. That's my shameless plug. No, but is there a podcast? Are there books? Is there newsletters? Is there a person that you follow for tips and stuff like that? How do you stay up to date on the trends?
I like Michael Stelzner. You put in the show notes his right last name because I'm probably butchering it, but I do listening to his. It's social marketing worlds. He's the organizer of that, and he has a podcast which is great, and I really do enjoy that a lot. Even though I'm not remembering the exact name of the podcast, but that one I listen to religiously. I listen to it a lot from a education standpoint for sure. And in terms of staying up on trends, I also just through LinkedIn, through curating content, I'm reading, my team is reading, cycling through a lot of stuff. And I'm really honestly listening to my team a lot who are pressing the buttons on there, who are seeing the trends. And we're constantly talking about that on our team meetings and such. And you brought up a good point. You asked me about consumption, obviously, with the TikTok thing. But then when you put your business hat on, the question really then becomes is who's your audience? And so it's like, when people ask, because they ask me all the time about TikTok. It used to be Snapchat, now it's TikTok. And they ask me, what, and I always have to ask back, you have to tell me who your audience is. I can't answer that for you until you tell me who your customer is. Because if you tell me your customer is 35 plus, I'm going to tell you that there are platforms that are better off for you. But if you tell me that your audience is 35 below, you're darn right. is definitely a place that you're going to gain some traction on for sure.
This is such a great segue. We're just going to dive right into it because I do want to touch on that. I've got follow-ups to like, we're going to talk social, we're going to talk authenticity, but I have a very direct follow-up to that statement that you just made, because I think that a common pitfall that I've seen across brands is, okay, there are all of these social platforms. I have to be on all of them. What are your thoughts on that? Is that something that you have also observed as well too?
My big stake on that, right or wrong, is I'm the opposite. I say that don't be a jack of all social media sites, master of none. Instead, focus on a few and do them really well. That's always just been my philosophy. And everything I talk about, I feel like I've watched over the last 15 years as an agency owner. And when my clients have decided to be on all of them, they tend to push out resources everywhere and just do them mediocre. And then on the flip side, when they decide to focus, some of them just are on LinkedIn, for example. They will do nothing else. They'll just say, Corey, we want to go all in on LinkedIn. And what happens is they do really well. And that's just because they are laser focused. And so I just believe that's the right way to go. And so I typically say one, two, maybe three at most pick your favorite platforms, plant your flag hard in the ground on those platforms and do them really well. Then eventually, if you're in the rhythm and you really feel like you got a grip on those, maybe you expand. But going all in on all of them, from my experience, has not been a good strategy.
No, I couldn't agree more. And I think when you say you're going all into, let's say I pick my two, or let's say I pick my three because I'm overly ambitious. So I pick my top three from a brand perspective. And I'm like, okay, these are my top three. I want to go on LinkedIn, I want to go on Facebook, and I want to go on X. I think that these three platforms have a different way of consuming content. So what are your thoughts on like how you construct your content strategy for social, knowing that?
That's a great question. That is why people do it mediocre is most of the time when they determine that they're going to go on all of them, they tend to put the content in a similar fashion on all of them. And that's a recipe for disaster. LinkedIn and Instagram work so differently. Obviously, LinkedIn and TikTok work so differently. LinkedIn and X, Facebook and X, so on and so forth. In order to do these platforms the right way, you really have to have a strategy for each of them. And so that takes a lot of time and resources. To your point, LinkedIn tends to be a very text heavy, long form type of approach, whereas Instagram, TikTok are much more video friendly. They're much more attention, little quick, fast moving entertainment first. And you got to be prepared to do that. So, oftentimes, with people who ask about TikTok strategies, my question beyond who's your audience is tell me about who's going to be your content creator. Because if you have somebody who's not friendly with TikTok, it's just, and this better than I do as a consumer there, it's just awkward. It's a square peg in a round hole. I'd prefer you not do it, you know?
Exactly. Do it well and know the platform. What do you know off the top of your head from an age demographic perspective? Which one is best for each age demographic? And are there overlaps?
Yes, I can give you general, and yes, there are overlaps for sure. But TikTok still strongly young, 13 to 26 is still their lion's share of their market share. Instagram, I consider the millennial market, which I teeter on. I'm considered a zennial. So you're looking at 40-ish and below, heavy female population, males on there too, but heavier on the side of female. X is dominated male. So if that happens to be your population, stronger on the male side than X, you might look at that more often. And then Facebook, obviously, everybody knows that's more the seasoned social media tool, 40 and above. That's where the Zennial, the X part comes into play, which again, I'm on as well. And then LinkedIn covers all of those gamuts. But the big difference with LinkedIn is it's obviously the business network. They actually recently, Katya, I don't know, this is fairly news to me, but I used to say that there was only one social media site that could use the B word, which is billions. Now LinkedIn can use that word too. They have a billion users, which is very recent, which is cool. COVID was very good to LinkedIn because a lot of people who had to work from home and couldn't face-to-face network joined LinkedIn. They had 300 million plus users join their site during the pandemic, which is pretty interesting. Another stat is 50% of their US audience earns $75,000 and above. So they have a very economically fluent audience and a very active business audience. So if you are, whether you're B2B or B2C, but you're really looking to drive business results, then I think LinkedIn's a great place for you.
No, I love it. I'm a huge fan of LinkedIn. And for me, you and I are the same. I like LinkedIn and Instagram. But again, my guilty pleasure is definitely TikTok. So we've talked about just the social platforms and knowing which, not knowing, but being strategic with these social platforms that you want to choose to be on. And I would say that's both personal and from a brand perspective. And then identifying what type of content works for that, and then as well as who the audience is for those. Now, let's talk a little bit about authenticity, because this is oftentimes a bit of a buzzword. We all talk about being, and I'm going to say it in air quotes, authentic, but what does that mean? And what does that look like for social media?
Yeah.
Is it me, no makeup? Do I have to do that in order to be authentic? Like, I think there's that, right? There's the raw side, you know?
I'm really glad you asked that question because it can have, although the word in itself is generally a good word, it can mean different things and it can intimidate, especially a business, because they're like, the first thing you think of, to your point, It could be the makeup thing, but it also just can mean, I don't want to show my vacation photos. I don't want to show my kids. I don't want to do all that stuff. And that's not really what I mean by being authentic on social media. You don't need to do that. You don't need to do anything that you're uncomfortable with. What I mean by being authentic on social is more about just, if you have this as like a barometer of authenticity, and right now you're just phoning it in, you're just doing white papers and brochures and links to articles, and you have just, the corporate veil is just up. And you're not letting people in at all to things like, what's going on behind the scenes? What do you got, some events that you guys do? Do you have some anniversaries and work anniversaries and parties that you guys throw at your office and such? Tell us a little bit about your hobbies, your interests, just a little bit to move over towards more of an authentic place. Your social media should be a full-on digital story. And most business social medias have one chapter, and that's the business links and articles chapter. And that's it. And that's boring. And that's not what social media is supposed to be about. So we got to bring in a couple extra layers. It doesn't have to go all the way over here. You don't have to go on full no makeup and feel uncomfortable. But what I'm asking you and your business to do is to lean in a little bit more to the human side of your business. And what will happen is you'll get more engagement and you'll move the needle more when you show people a little bit more who your business is.
Do you think that, I'm going to call it like a little bit of like the uncomfortable barometer, is a good barometer from judging judging authenticity from a brand perspective, right? To me, like there's this knee jerk, oh, you want to see more behind the scenes, right? Like you want to see what my boss looks like. I see a lot of those posts, right? Like the boss walking in, and it shows that personality. But then there are people that are like, oh, that must be what it means, so I'm going to do that. Help me understand what a brand can do to evaluate what would be a good representation of their brand, like the human side of their brand.
Yeah. When I speak on stage, I'll typically do a digital audit, if I can, of the attendees that are in the room. So let's see, I just did a dentist one, so it's fresh on my mind. So I'll get a bunch of dentist business profiles that I'll look at. So I'll go to Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, wherever. And Katya, I'll do this every single time. And it's always the same. I'll scroll through and I'll see one like, 0 likes, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 1, 2, 0, so on and so forth. And they're all articles, white papers, before and after teeth, all that stuff, which is just terrible. But then the one that always has a lot of likes and stuff, what are the commonalities? Human faces, real, and something interesting and fun. That's really what it comes down to. And those can look like an anniversary, maybe a clinical anesthesiologist or somebody, is celebrating a 5-year anniversary at the office. It might be somebody just got married. It might be that we're having a social event. It might be a testimonial with a patient in the room with the dentist. It might be Halloween. It might be pets. Every single time though, every time, no matter what, when I show on the screen, and in the month of March, which one was the best photo or which best 3 posts, it's always got those characteristics. And it's never, ever one that is some tips about keeping your teeth clean. Although that's important, but it's never the one that gets the most engagement, ever. So to answer your question, it's real humans. It's somewhat entertaining, because you got to remember, the first word in social media is social. This isn't billboard marketing. This isn't billboard advertising. This is social media. We've chosen to play in this sandbox. We got to play by their rules. And people are here to take breaks. People are here to scroll, to surf, to enjoy themselves for a little while, not necessarily to read long form articles or educate themselves oftentimes. So we got to play the game.
I love that. I love that advice. I also feel so strongly about, from like a content perspective, I think a lot of brands do get stuck in the white paper and the tips. And I do think that is really helpful, because all content should be there to entertain, inspire, or educate in some way, shape, or form. But you're right. It is social. We all want to connect. And even, I think I can say post-COVID, even post-COVID, right? There are more people working remote now, which I don't have a stat on that. If I had a fact check, then I would include that. But there are more people working remote now than ever before. So this need for human connection is so important. And I think a brand, if they don't take that into account, they're missing something because people react emotionally. And if you're telling me a story, you're selling me without selling me something. Like I'm looking at your background. Like there are so many things that I'm consuming in just a conversation that we're having, or even if you were just giving me a monologue of something and I was watching you on social media. And I think brands a lot of times miss that.
Totally. And don't forget that, just using the dentist office example, what an opportunity for us to be able to, because we don't go to a dentist office because it's a dentist office. We go there because we want to trust the dentist, the artist who is fixing our teeth, and we want to have a good experience. And so if your social media can help us believe that's going to be the case before we ever go in, that's going to help you sell me on going to. So just one quick example. This was actually the one of the dentists that I looked at. They had a like a little bit of a game show thing that they did with all of their team members there. So they all were sitting down. It's like a quiz show thing, and it said it would ask questions, and they had their eyes closed, and they'd point to the person who was the one. So it might say, "Who's the cleanest? Who's often losing their pen?" And they'd point, "Who's the bossiest?" And so I didn't forget it. It was so cool. It had tons of engagement, and what it did for an audience perspective is we got to know the staff at this dentist office before we ever walked in the doors. You could tell they were fun. You could tell that they were relaxed. They were cool. They were calm, and they're going to show us a good experience. How cool is that to showcase on social media? I thought it was awesome.
Oh, I love that. I just totally got an idea for a social media post. I'm going to write that down after we finish recording. I love that. The other thing that I wanted to make sure that I wanted to touch on when we talk about social media and authenticity is this need for keeping up with the Joneses, right?
Yeah.
Taking a look at your competition. What is this balance that I, as a brand, should take when I'm looking at my competition? Do I want to do exactly what they're doing? If I see that they've got an engaging post, am I going to want to replicate that? My knee jerk is to say no, because that's not being authentic, right? What is your version of something like that? But I'd love to hear your thoughts on what should I be looking at from a competitive landscape?
Yeah, that's a great question. I would say that definitely from an authenticity standpoint, don't copy, but definitely look at your competition, not only your competition, but just the social media sites and your industry in general for ideas. Because I think that you'll find good ones and then you can play off of those. And I think there's nothing wrong with that. Oftentimes in the speaking industry, we call them like swipe files, where we might watch other speakers and just like something that they do. And you don't ever take or steal, but you say, wow, that really worked with an audience. How can I make an activity similar to that or something to that effect? So you got to make sure you can put your head on the pillow at night and keep your integrity and all that fun stuff. But there's absolutely nothing wrong with doing some research and picking out ideas from either your competition or the industry in general. And then another thing I'll say real quick is just keeping up with the trends. You mentioned that to me as we were talking pre-call. That's really important too. Trends will help you get better engagement. There's something going on Instagram or TikTok, for example, that is already moving the needle, and you get into that flywheel, so to speak, and you do something that's in line with a trend. Why wouldn't you do that? That is a smart idea as a marketing business mind to do that. So I think that's 100% a good idea. Stay on trend and watch what the world is watching, essentially. And if it makes sense for your business authentically, then go for it. If it doesn't, don't put a square peg into a round hole, because that's going to make you feel uncomfortable. That's going to make us feel uncomfortable. And that's just going to be an uncomfortable situation. But if you see something, you're like, we could play off that. We could do that. That looks fun. Then do it. That's a great idea.
No, I love that. I think last thing, well, I feel like I have a lot of last questions that I want to ask you, but I do want to make sure that the audience hears this, because I read your book, which we haven't even touched on. It is called Authentically Social. Everyone should read it. When you're trying to get started from a strategy perspective, it's such a great book. It is also, I love the way that you've broken it down, where you're giving us an overview, a take, and there's an example, and then there's action after each one of the chapters. I love me a good list. But one of the things that I wanted to double click a little bit more on was the content. You talk about creating buckets. Can you elaborate on the content buckets that you're talking about when you do talk about that for social media?
Yes. Thank you again for the kind recommendation on the book. Again, when I do the digital audit, I look for different buckets of content. So if I look at, say, a month's worth of social media content, what I'm looking for is a story being told with multiple chapters and not just a one trick pony. And oftentimes we'll see that. Even if it's not just like those articles or links, like I said, sometimes I'll use the dentist example, the before and afters. Let's just say that's one. They're just not doing nothing but before and after. So all of a sudden you see an Instagram grid and it's just filled with before and afters. Or maybe it's just filled with just testimonials or whatever it is, but it's all one thing. And people get tired of that. And it's just, you're just beating a dead horse kind of thing, like over and over again. So instead, what we want to look at is 4 to 6 buckets of different categories of content. So what might those categories look like? I mentioned testimonials. That might be one thing. A category might just be, education. So one day a week, we are going to focus on really giving you good information so that we keep your teeth healthy and clean, or whatever industry we're talking about. We're going to do some fun. Friday might be fun. So we're going to find something to make you smile, to brighten your day, whatever. That might be a category. Behind the scenes, you mentioned that earlier. One might be showing how the sausage is made, as they say, a little bit of what you might never see on the outside, but we want to show you what's going on behind the scenes and take people back a little bit. So we create, whenever I do like a social audit with a company, we'll leave there with 4 to 6 buckets of content, categories. And then every month they can look down at that month of content and make sure they've hit each of those buckets. And if they haven't, next month they need to make sure that they did. And that's what I mean by that.
Love that. I always like to leave people with those action insights as well when they listen. Now, I do have a final question for you. And this one is, if you knew then what you know now, what is the marketing advice that you give to yourself?
Yeah, this is, first of all, thank you. I don't say this lightly, but you're a great interviewer and I really appreciate the time. And this was great to be on. And I'd be happy to jump back on again down the road and we can talk on different topics. But the advice I'd give myself is something that I was given, but I didn't follow it until later on in life, is to follow the positive taps. And it's similar to marketing. What I mean by that is, you mentioned, we talked a little bit about the universe before, but like, what is kind of just naturally working, and listening to that and letting that kind of lead us in what we continue to do. So like when I was starting my business, I really wanted to go in this direction, but everybody was telling me that they wanted this direction. But I wanted to go here because my mind and everything was stubborn and I wanted to go here. And finally, after a couple of years of suffering over here, I listened to what the world wanted, or my little world, and I went that direction and life became much easier. And so if you take that from a marketing perspective, what is easy and fun to do? What is, you and I talked about energy giving. What do you enjoy doing? Let's just say you started a podcast like you did, and that could be a marketing strategy, by the way. So somebody starts to do a podcast, starts interviewing C-level executives or industry experts or whatever, and they're like, gosh, this came really naturally to me. People are liking this. That's a positive tap. Keep doing that versus I'm just not enjoying this. Nobody cares. This isn't working. This feels like work to me. Then maybe figure out a different strategy. So over the years, I've learned to listen to the world and let it guide you a little bit into what strategy you should continue to focus on.
What's ironic about that takeaway is that to me, it sounds like you're leaning into the being authentically you, right? Because they're all kind of similar things that you touched on when we were talking about authenticity. If it makes you uncomfortable, don't do it, right? And it's interesting in life, there is that balance because there's a part of me also, and I actually literally said this today, if it doesn't make you a little uncomfortable, then it's too easy. You got to be like challenging yourself. So it's an interesting balance, but I love that key takeaway. I love that advice. And hopefully people are hearing it at the exact time that they're supposed to, because we put that out there in the universe. I cannot thank you enough for coming on here, sharing your wisdom. I really appreciate you. And I've thoroughly enjoyed our conversation.
I have as well. Thank you so much. If there's anything I can do for any of your listeners, you can find me out on the socials, as they say, but it's been an absolute pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Excellent. Thank you.
This episode was super juicy. His book was amazing. Highly recommend it. Let's get started with the key takeaways. So I want to really dive into it. The key takeaway number one for me was unveiling the authenticity paradox. In a world just kind of inundated with marketing noise, authenticity really emerges as kind of this beacon guiding successful social media strategies. I know that sounds a little bit hokey, but it's true. Corey articulates authenticity isn't merely about sharing personal anecdotes. It's about kind of breaking down this corporate veil and fostering genuine connections with your audience. Embracing authenticity means showcasing the human side of your brand, staying true to your values, and engaging with sincerity. I firmly believe that authenticity humanizes our brand, resonating deeply with our audience's aspirations and desires. It's like that real connection, right? And by embracing authenticity, we can create a digital narrative that kind of transcends just promotions. It's fostering these lasting relationships built on trust and sincerity. This is where brand loyalty is born, right? Now, this approach not only enhances the brand loyalty, but it also sets us apart in a crowded digital landscape where genuine connections are increasingly valued over polished marketing messages. Chew on that one for a little bit, right? Okay, so here's key takeaway number 2, mastering the platform puzzle. Now, navigating this diverse landscape of social media platforms really demands a strategic approach tailored to whatever your business's unique needs are. His insights really kind of underscore the importance of focusing on a select few platforms and excelling in them rather than spreading ourselves too thin. Now, this take really hit home for me. It's a battle I think most marketers encounter, this kind of push to be everywhere in order to be meaningful. But really, honestly, what's more important is this need to align your platform selection with your audience demographics and their content preferences. By kind of mastering these intricacies of each platform, we can amplify our reach and impact, maximizing our presence in a competitive digital landscape. Now, this focus approach not only streamlines our efforts, but also allows us to allocate resources effectively. Now, this ensures that we delivered this tailored content that we talked about that resonates with the audience. So basically, you don't have to be on all the platforms. You don't have to be on Snapchat. You don't have to be on Instagram. You don't have to be on Twitter or X if it doesn't make sense for your business. That's the nutshell version, I guess, of my very wordy takeaway. Now, my final key takeaway is the art of understanding your audience. Now, listening to your audience isn't just a best practice, it is the foundation of effective engagement. Corey's insights remind me of the transformative power of audience-centric marketing. By staying in touch with your audience's preferences, behaviors, and industry trends, we can glean invaluable insights to inform our content strategy and foster meaningful connections. This is consistent with another interview that I did, I believe, with Hosias. If you haven't listened to it, go back and listen to it. We talk about segmentation and the importance of really understanding your audience so much in that particular episode. It is something that continues to come up, right? By embracing this just kind of proactive listening approach, we are not only strengthening our relationships with our audience, but also we position ourselves as that trusted advisor, guiding them through this kind of consumer journey with, you've guessed it, authenticity, and most importantly, empathy. What were your takeaways? Slide into my DMs on LinkedIn or shoot me an email with your thoughts. Email is katya@lets-talk-marketing.com. A special thank you to my podcast producers, content allies, and thank you, most importantly, for spending your time with me today. Until next time, may the conversation flow, the laughter linger, and the outlook remain optimistic but grounded in reality. This is Katya, signing off.